Retro.
Are you an aspiring Jedi, or do you dabble with the dark side of the Force?
Regardless of whether you fancy yourself a defender of the light or an aspiring Sith Lord, you're going to need a lightsaber.
Podcast Stardust is pleased to partner with Saber Masters, the creators of high-quality, durable, and affordable lightsabers.
Saber Masters is preparing to launch the Ultimate Lightsaber 2.0, and right now you can get 2 for the price of 1.
So, check out the link in our show notes and go get your Ultimate Lightsabers from Saber Masters.
And don't forget to use our referral code STARDUST to save $10 at checkout.
And each purchase using our referral code helps support Podcast Stardust.
Hi, this is Emily Swallow, the armorer in The Mandalorian. You're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. This is the way.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And our rewatch of the Clone Wars continues in this episode. But before we dive back into that, Jay, please remind everybody where we can be found on social media.
Roger. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and X at Podcast Stardust.
It's your programming, isn't it?
It is.
Okay. All right. This is the line. The signal's boosted to maximum output. The shield is down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So today we are looking at episode 3 of season 1, which is Shadow of Malevolence. This is the second part of a 3-episode story arc that began with, what was that called? Malevolence, Rising Malevolence? I can't remember last week, but we talked about that. So you can go back to episode 770 and check that one out if you haven't done so already. Jay, you want to go ahead and give us the summary of this episode before we dive into our discussion?
Absolutely. Anakin Skywalker prepares to lead Shadow Squadron on a mission to destroy the Malevolence just as Grievous decides to attack a Republic medical station that currently has 60,000 clone patients aboard. In an attempt to ambush Grievous, Anakin leads his squadron through the Balmorra Run and narrowly evades a school of Nibre mantas. Once they arrive at the medical station, Anakin has to change his tactics from assaulting the bridge of the Malevolence to knocking out its primary weapon. The attack is successful, the medical station is saved, and Obi-Wan arrives to pursue Grievous and the Malevolence as the episode concludes.
Yeah, I like this episode, and it was fun to watch it again. It occurs to me I haven't seen this one for a long time, but I don't usually start in season 1 with my rewatches. But anyway, what do you remember of seeing this episode the first time, and how did it strike you?
Honestly, I don't remember a whole lot of the details about the very first, genesis of some of these episodes because like you, it's one of those things that if I've seen it once, how many years ago, I remember bits and pieces of it and how it fits into the overall storyline and the arc of different things. But I mean, to really put myself where I was, I mean, we're talking 2008. So, I was a little busy with my kids and stuff at that point. So I just remember gobbling these up on Friday nights on, Cartoon Network. And a lot of times it was after the kids had even gone to bed, or, sometimes I would record it and then just watch it on my own time. It was sort of my, little private enjoyment kind of thing that I was able to do without the kids, believe it or not, when they were little. But yeah, so I do remember though, thinking to myself, and it came back to me this time too, how much Anakin reminded me of what Darth Vader was doing as he was skimming over the Death Star, as he was flying over the Malevolence. And so as we get into the storyline and we talk a little bit more, about what their MO was and how it all played out, we'll get into that just a little bit more. But I remember thinking that at the time and thinking, how different is this from, when he was making his run against the rebels?
Yeah, to that end, and we're not going to talk about this episode in chronological order. That's just not the way we're doing this rewatch here. But I was reminded of Poe Dameron's attack on that dreadnought at the beginning of the Last Jedi,
Oh, good
and
one.
he had to clear the entire deck of all the cannons so that the bombers could come in and take it out. And in this case, we've got Anakin Skywalker leading a squadron of Y-wings against this battleship that's brimming with cannons trying to shoot them down, and the Y-wings are also a bomber craft
Mhm.
and all that. So I don't know that this episode influenced The Last Jedi or anything like that, but it was kind of neat to see that similarity.
You're absolutely right, and I did not even put 2 and 2 together with that. That is a fantastic comparison.
hmm The other thing this episode reminded me of from recent Star Wars was when they were going through the nebula on the Balmorra run, which is a smuggler path. They came up against those gigantic Nebrae mantas, which are giant space floating creatures that live in the nebula. I was that that's like in Ahsoka when they got to what was the name of the world in the other galaxy? Its name's escaping me, and they flew through the herd of the Purtles,
Mhm.
the pod. And so
Yep.
again, and Dave Filoni was involved in both of those things.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like he had to have this in mind when he created that scene for Ahsoka.
Oh, you would think so. I know, and I thought the exact same thing about those mantas.
Mm.
And at first, I thought, "Was this the first thing we ever saw of the?" And then I said, "No, no, 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 these are completely different." And then I looked it up really quickly, and so that, of course, did cement that idea that no, they are not Purgils.
Right,
But
right.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah, they were kind of portrayed as being a bit more chaotic than the
Yeah,
Purgle were, and Plo Koon was reacting to him he was rather alarmed by that. So
yeah, I love that when Ahsoka's like, "They look hungry," and it goes, "Nah, they're just smiling at you."
yeah, she panicked a lot this
She
episode.
did.
What'd you think?
Yeah, she did. Well, I think some of that was to illustrate just the idea that she was still very young and she was very impressionable and not into her Jedi training just yet so that she could kind of let go and let the force sort of a thing. But I mean, for me, I think Anakin was just eating it up, honestly. And, because he was talking about the Balmorra run as being a smuggler's path that
hmm
he heard about on Tatooine, so it was kinda getting back to his roots in that way, and so, all I could think of was and I couldn't I knew he didn't say this in the show, but I was thinking, all he needs to say is, "Now this is pod racing,"
Right.
as he was going
Sure.
through, and they even kinda harkened back to him when he hit the fuel cells. It's sort of a Phantom Menace vibe too, exactly where they hit to make the primary weapon blow up.
hmm
But, getting back to Ahsoka, yeah, she was very skitty in this whole thing. And so it was Anakin that was anchoring her down and trying to get her to, just relax and trust in what we're doing and trust the force and everything like that.
Yeah, and then the flip side of that is when they were making their attack run on the Malevolence, and he's doggedly determined to get that attack off on the bridge because it'll destroy the Malevolence or at least incapacitate it, and he'll get Grievous in the process. But in the meantime, a number of the Y-wings have been shot down from this, and she finally gets through to him. It's like, Master, you can get there, but not everybody else can.
Mhm.
And so she kind of brings him to his senses on that and gets him to realize that they need to alter the attack or none of them are going to make it out of this. And so I don't necessarily want to say it was inconsistent the way Ahsoka was portrayed from one scene to the next, but I think to the point you were making, there just is some maturity that was happening that she's going through. She's wise in some ways, but faced with something in the unknown like these Nebrae mantas, she just kind of lost it.
Yeah, she really did. And I think a lot of it was just completely out of her wheelhouse when it came to any kind of experiences that she had, but she needed to be able to do these kinds of things because that's what makes you a seasoned Jedi in the end.
hmm So, changing gears for a second here, at the beginning of the episode, we're aboard the Malevolence, and I can't remember exactly what had happened, but one of the battle droids, kind of like piloting the ship, says something that angers Grievous, and so he just smacks the head off this thing.
Mhm.
And Dooku's there. I think he like appearing being a hologram, and he's like,
Yes.
you know, uh, these battle droids are expensive, and the Jedi do not abuse their clones. So, to which Grievous responds, "Well, that is a weakness." And okay, did that stand out to you? What did you make of all that?
Well, I mean, it was for me, I guess it was a little bit more of a comic relief thing than
Hmm.
anything else, and I didn't really think too deeply into that, quite honestly. But I mean, I guess it was Dooku trying to get Grievous to just keel, have more of an even keel when it came to his
Hmm.
management of their technology and their funds. But what do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's two parts to this. One, it is it is a kind of a comic relief moment. I mean, because it's a droid. We're not going to see a clone get his head smacked off by a Jedi. We get to see a Jedi general abuse a bunch of clones in season 4, but we're not there yet. Uh, the bigger point, though, with Dooku reminding him that the Jedi don't abuse their clones this way is okay. One, why was that going to get through to Grievous? But two, just this notion that Dooku's bringing up that the Jedi really do respect their troops
Mhm.
out of all of this. And then Grievous decides, well, that's a weakness and we can use it to our advantage. So they're going to go attack this medical facility. This is like a major war crime that's being
Yeah, it
committed
is.
here. And okay, Grievous is a villain. He's not a misunderstood character. He's not someone like Dooku. We've come to find out over the years had a fundamental disagreement with the way that the Jedi were conducting themselves. He's not someone who fell to the dark side trying to protect the one he loved or anything like that. He is just out and out evil when it
Mhm.
comes down to it. But even then, how's the crawl from Revenge of the Sith opens? War rages across the galaxy. There are heroes on both sides. Well, not here.
No.
This is not heroic in any sense of the word.
No, it is so true. And, and I guess the whole thing is he's trying to really hit the Republic where it hurts. And that is in the soldiers that they actually do care about.
Yeah, and I get the feeling he was trying to draw out a bigger Republic presence to
Oh, yeah.
annihilate with his ship. But the thing is that it wasn't just that. When it showed him destroying a Republic cruiser and then a medical frigate. And then when they finally get to the medical station and there are medical ships flying away from it, he annihilates them. He sticks
Mhm.
the ion weapon on them and then orders his droids to fire upon those ships. So anyway, I'm not sure that I have any great point to make with that. We all know Grievous is evil, but it just did stick out to me that traditionally we see him abusing his droids, trying to slaughter Jedi, sometimes successfully slaughtering Jedi, tossing clones around and the like. But this is perhaps one of the most despicable things he's done.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so
Mhm.
true. And, I was thinking to myself as well, and this is kind of not really off topic, but it is, that when Anakin finally does come face to face with Grievous in Revenge of the Sith, and he says, "You're shorter than I expected,"
Mhm.
they never actually do come face to face in the Clone Wars, do they? I mean, they
Nope.
fought kind of adjacent to each other and around each other, but that really is the first time that they came face to face was Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, Obi-Wan gets multiple fights against him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but they
Okay.
were very careful to make sure that they preserve that moment in Revenge of the Sith.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
that
Which I
first
think is
meeting.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah. So I mean, Grievous is on the ship here, and that was that. So
Mhm.
okay, so something else about this episode here, when it's all said and done, and Anakin has led the surviving clones against the to fire on the primary weapon, which is successful, and then when they finally get around to firing that weapon, it causes the whole thing to blow up and disable the Malevolence. It also knocks out the hyperdrive. They get aboard the medical station, and Plo Koon compliments Anakin on his leadership. Does that feel earned to you?
I mean, in this episode, that's a double-edged sword kind of a thing because, I
Hmm.
mean, he did get them to victory in the sense that they were able to take out the malevolence, but the way that he did it, he really did go off onto, a tangent in a way with the way that he was going through the Balmorra run, and he wasn't going around the nebula, and he was really taking a lot of chances with his clones, and he did end up losing quite a few. He lost Matchstick and he lost a few other ones. So, yeah, I mean, that's a tough call. And,
Mhm.
I think if you're looking just specifically at the end of the day, did he get the job done? Then yeah, but was it the method in which he did it that he was okay with? So, I don't know. What do you think? That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I got mixed feelings on it too because he certainly is inspiring his men at the beginning of the episode, and Plo Koon notes that,
Oh,
that
yeah.
they're ready to run through a wall for him. That he didn't say that, but along those lines, and not to mention the clones were all just like gung ho about this to begin with. It's like, yeah,
Mhm.
we'll get there, we'll do this, we'll knock it out. They had all the confidence in the world, but then he leads them through the Balmorra run. And I guess it's his confidence that kind of got them through that. I mean, it certainly did work to get Ahsoka to calm down and everything like that. But once they got to the Malevolence, you know, it was not leadership that he was exhibiting on that initial attack run there. I mean, it was, he advised the clones to steer wide of that ion blast, and a couple of them got caught up in it. He lost a couple ships there, and then they're making that run, and it took Ahsoka pleading with him to get him to change his mind. So I don't know. I mean, I see him as a person that can inspire more out of others, but I'm not sure that he necessarily did anything that I would have that I would have given him an award for leadership, if you know what I
Mhm.
mean, in this
Right.
episode.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm with you on that one. I am. And to your earlier point too about when you're asking about Dooku reprimanding Grievous for knocking the head off the battle droid and then saying those are expensive.
Mhm,
He also, when you were talking about Anakin losing part of his fleet, Grievous loses part of his fleet as well, because
mhm.
even the battle droids point out, but sir, we'll lose our droids, the vulture droids. And Grievous was like, I don't care.
Yeah, do
So,
it.
and you do see these vulture droids just in space, just incapacitated. So I'm wondering how much of that he actually does have to answer for, or if Dooku was just kind of almost like it was a joke in the end. Now those are expensive. Ha ha
Mhm.
ha ha ha. Because obviously Grievous doesn't care. Because
Yeah.
vulture droids have to be expensive too.
Well, Dooku, he's not Kylo Ren, right? I mean, Kylo Ren
Mhm.
would throw a fit because he got bad news and destroy a console, and and there was a girl. And they were, what girl? And nearly choke it. And then Vader, you failed me for the last time, and would kill his underlings.
Mhm.
I can't
Mhm.
remember any instances of Dooku doing things like that. I mean, he
Mhm.
would have opponents executed that he. In the first episode, he was going to have Katunko killed because he wouldn't join the Separatists and things like that. But he's not just randomly wandering around dismantling the battle droids that failed him.
Right.
And, I guess that, that's partly to do with the fact that, he's a mature individual. What's that going to help by him doing that? It's just a waste of resources. But let's also think about the flip side of this, you know, uh, back on the medical station at the end of this episode, Nala Say is, and there's a clone, and there's this conversation going on around Anakin about how that he mentions that he doesn't take the lives that he lost in the battle lightly. And I get that. But, to this point, you've been making this comparison between Grievous and Anakin. There, he doesn't take these lives lightly, but look what he becomes.
Mhm.
He eventually becomes Darth
Mhm.
Vader, and the lives of his men mean very, very little at that point.
Right. Yeah. Well, Anakin is definitely a husk of himself when it comes to that point as well.
Mhm,
But you make me think of another thing as well, as far as the cost is concerned between each side here. And you're looking at the separatists with their cost for the battle droids and everything like that. And then you're looking at the Republic, and we obviously know that through the creation of the clones, there was so much money that went into that. I mean, there was so much funding that went into that. But how much more funding is going into places like this medical station that
mhm,
is quote unquote fixing all of these clones? Because, part of me thinks, wow, that's really awesome about the Republic because we kind of had been not we were sort of led to believe that clones were just expendable.
Mhm.
But, obviously they're still human, they're still people, so they still deserve a chance to heal. And it's just I don't know, there's just some sort of irony to me in that whole thing. And you know what I mean? And then also seeing all of the clones in the Bacta tanks, just like they were the little, droid or the little clone fetuses on Camino. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it was like they're starting life over in a way, but yeah.
No, I was gonna mention the back to tanks too, 'cause this was the first time I ever noticed all the back to tanks on that medical station, and there's 60,000 injured clones on
Right.
this
That's
station.
what I'm saying.
Right,
Mhm.
and how many was it that were getting delivered at the beginning of Attack of the Clones? It was like
Mhm.
200,000 units or something like that, or a million
And
units, but
1,000,000 more on the way.
yeah, 60,000's a huge number even in an army that size,
Mhm.
and and so, going back to this whole man, we spent an awful lot of time talking about this line from Dooku, but the notion that the Jedi don't abuse their clones like this. Well, I mean, the, to your point, clones are living beings, and two, it takes a lot longer to grow a clone that's fit for battle than it does to make a battle droid.
Mhm.
I mean, it takes half a lifetime to make a clone that's and capable of going off into battle. Meanwhile, in Geonosis, they were cranking out droids by the dozens, the hundreds, the thousands
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. And,
So,
and by comparison too, I'm sure that a battle droid probably takes less time to repair
mhm.
than
If
a
they
human
even
takes to
bother,
heal.
it's
Yeah, if they even bother, right, yeah.
right.
Interesting.
Um,
The
anything else
morals
from
of
this?
all this.
Yeah. Anything else from this episode stand out to you?
Well, okay, so this is a weird little detail sort of a thing, but Plo Koon's breather, for
Mhm.
whatever reason, the artwork on the metal just really stood out to me, and I'd kind of noticed it before, but I was really studying it this time, and I was kind of mesmerized by the style of it, and it just seemed so almost like steampunk medieval to me, the way that the
Huh.
metal was so intricate, and it was almost like a lacy kind of a thing, but it was very steampunky to me, and I was like, "That is super cool." And have we ever seen a Keldor without their mask? I'm just curious.
No, trying to think. We've not seen one, but it was in the Legends series. I maybe think Fate of the Jedi. I can't remember which one, where Luke and Ben Skywalker go to the Keldor homeworld to meet with some Keldor Force users. They're not Jedi there, and of course, on that world, they don't need their breathers, and so there's a description of what they look like in that book.
Okay.
Which I just can't think of the name of it off the top of my head.
Mhm. I was just curious. But
Yeah.
yeah, for whatever reason, that just stuck with me this time. And of course, it's great to see Nala say
Yeah. Yeah.
as it comes around full circle.
Interesting little bit on the featurette that comes with this episode on StarWars.com. And it's Dave Filoni talking about the design of the Malevolence. And I encourage you to go check this out because you get all the stuff on the visuals of the things I'm about to talk about here. But they were trying to figure out what the Malevolence was going to look like. And it's, of course, this gigantic city sized battleship and bigger than that. And they initially went to unused concept art from the Revenge of the Sith. And I can't remember who he said the artist was on that. It was not Doug Chang. But yeah, but the thing was it just looked almost a little too alien for Star Wars. So what they did is they took some influences from the Mount Calamari battle cruisers from Return of the Jedi and the Rebel transport from The Empire Strikes Back
Hmm.
to kind of give it more of the domed clamshell looking shape that it's got with the raised bridge in the back that comes from that little thing that comes off the back of the Republic transport.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was the big influence on. So that's how they came up with the design. They took this design from the Revenge of the Sith that had the big ion cannons kind of, it's supposed to be on both sides of the ship. They were kind of stacked one behind the other. And then they just kind of modified it to make it fit in the galaxy based on what we've seen from previous starships.
Oh, that's really cool. I didn't know that. And that raised area too with the bridge
Mhm.
just does remind me of the Invisible Hand. I mean, it's got that exact same kind of like protrusion, if you will.
Yeah, and that threw me because the Invisible Hand's bridge is not up there.
Mhm.
It's on the front of the ship, and we know that
Mhm.
because that's where Anakin, Obi-Wan, and the Chancellor are when the thing crashes on Coruscant.
Another happy landing.
Yeah, because they lose the entire back half of that ship. But that's kind of like the observation deck where Dooku and Palpatine were for that big saber battle. So
Yeah. Yeah, it
yeah,
was.
they definitely have a design motif there amongst the separatists.
Yeah, that's for sure.
All right. Well, anything else?
There was something and I can't think of it now, Dennis. As you were talking, I was like, "Oh, there was something else I wanted to say." And now I can't remember what it was.
All right. Well then, okay. Well, fun conversation, Jay. Thank you for joining us
Mhm.
for this, and thank you to all of our listeners for hanging out while we discussed this episode of the Clone Wars. This is fun to go back and do it. It's
Oh,
these episodes were so huge. It was the only Star Wars we were getting at the time, and to kind of go back and revisit these and see where everything's evolved. All right. Well, with that, just want to say thank you all for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust and a discussion of this episode of the Clone Wars. We hope you enjoyed it and you've been enjoying the series so far. And if you want to make sure you get all of those, then hit that subscribe button on your podcast of choice if you haven't done so already. I'd also like to encourage you to head over to retrozapp.com where you can check out our entire catalog of our previous 772 episodes, which covers all kinds of things from the movies to news and other series like The Bad Batch. And while you're there, you can check out the other great podcasts that are part of the Retros App Podcast Network, such as Agent Steele's Case Files, Animaniacast, Brews and Blasters, Dork Lair, and a whole lot more. Of course, we always love your ratings and reviews on whatever podcatcher it is that you use to do such things. And if you've got a spare moment, we'd love it if you could share this show or another one that you might have liked on social media with your friends. So, having said that, Jay, remind everybody what our social media contacts are and where else we can find on the internet one more time.
yes, and it's absolutely free, unlike Battle Droids. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and X at Podcast Stardust. And you can also check out our multitude of Pinterest boards over on our Pinterest page. And then you can also check us out on both of our YouTube outlets. So we are on the traditional YouTube channel as well as YouTube Music. And so we'd love it if you'd head over to both of those, like, subscribe, and even share those with your friends. And then if you want to hit us up in real time, we have a Discord room on the RetroZap Discord server. And so we're one of many different shows over there. All the Retros Up shows have their own room. So if you're looking for something and fun to talk about, you can head over to the link in our show notes and it'll take you right to where you need to go. And then if you'd like to support the show, and we would love it if you did, you can head over to our T Public store. So our storefront has 7 different show logo designs available on all kinds of things from t-shirts, sweatshirts, and home goods, and pretty much everything in between. So once again, that link is in our show notes. And one other link that we have for you is our Saber Masters. And so if you are in need of a battle ready lightsaber or two, you can head over to sabermasters.com, or once again, hit that link in our show notes and it will take you to a wonderful website that will give you lots and lots of lightsabers to choose from. And if you do get something, make sure that you put in the code Stardust at checkout, and that special code will get you an extra $10 off of your purchase. And a little bit comes back to us as well.
Jay, before we go, you remind everybody what you got going on with cosplay?
Sure. Well, you can always catch me on my Instagram, which is over at j.snipscosplay. And you can catch me as Ahsoka from the Clone Wars, but seasons 3 through 5, as well as Hera from both the Ahsoka series and the Rebels series. No Purrgil there, though. And my original concept Mandalorian, based on Tahiri Vela from Legends, as well as my fourth sister Inquisitor. And so I've got some events coming up this fall. More details on those coming soon. But until then, j.snipscosplay.
Okay, upcoming on the show this Wednesday, Jay has rounded up a whole bunch of new Star Wars fashion and lifestyle products, which she'll be presenting in the segment we call World Between Worlds. And then on Friday, we get back into our weekly discussion of some recent Star Wars news. Hopefully there'll be some, but we'll find out. All right, well, with that said, thanks for listening to episode 773 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a great week, and until next time, may the Force be with you.